Hey everyone, and welcome to the final sanding process of your drywall taping. The final sanding process is quite a bit of a complex scenario. In this case, you're seeing me work with a machine here, a sanding machine, and it's not necessary to use a sanding machine, but it is a good help. It takes off a lot of the strain off the body, and if you are delicate with it, start from the slowest process and get used to the machine. It works wonders. I personally use this machine to take off most of the bulk of the work. Just to take off the bulk of the work, not to necessarily finish the work, but to take off the bulk of the sanding. After I use the machine, I'm going to go back over it with a sanding pole, a much more detailed sander, and also a sanding sponge. Now, in terms of just the final sand, what the objective here is to go over, I guess, every ounce of the wall from edge to edge, the full square of each wall. And that's the best way I can describe it. Slowly and very detailed. Again, with the sanding machine, you probably won't get all the details out, but you are going to get all the bulk of the job out. And what that does is save you a lot of energy on your body. So at least that way, when you do the pole sanding, well, it's not that hard. You're not doing a lot of sanding with the pole sander. And when you sponge sand, it's not that hard. Now, this is a big job for me at the time I'm doing it. And I do jobs that's big. 10,000 square foot is a very common number, or, even less than that, 5,000 square foot. Let's say 5,000 square foot is a lot. And it is a lot to sand. It gets tedious, it gets exhausting. And as you can see me here in my suit, it gets really dusty, right? So to get out of that area as quickly as possible kind of is the objective. You don't want to be in here longer than necessary. You don't want all this dust on your body. And you don't want, to do an improper job. You've just worked so hard to get this job up to par, and then now to rush out and miss spots is just unacceptable. Now, you're not going to get everything 100%, but at the same time, you want to try your best to get as close as possible. I start with the walls generally and end with the ceiling, because when you're sanding the ceiling and the dust is in the air, you can just walk out of the room because now the room is finished, and give yourself a break. So that's how I was taught. I find it to be a great, effective way for sanding. So that's how I sand. I start with the walls, I finish with the ceiling. Now, something important to mention is a system. In taping, you need a system. You need a sense of direction, of how to keep track of what's going on. Seeing me in this video here, you might realize that I start on the edges and then I start doing the middle. So I do the edges first. I try to keep myself close to the edge, and then I work my way into the middle. Again, this is the machine sander, and you are going to be using 150 grit sandpaper. You're also going to be waiting until the job is 100% dry. And again, you want all the protective equipment. In some cases, you can wear eye protection. That also helps a lot. It does tend to be a bit annoying with the eye protection on, because once you're sanding the ceiling, all that dust is falling in your face. But the good side is you're protecting your eyes. Now, just because this is all about the process and not about the technique, just the process of what we're doing here, we're not going to get into too much of the details of technique in terms of my suit, my vacuum machine. We're not going to go into that. We're just going to go into the process. And after I'm finished with the the machine sander here, walls and then ceiling, after I'm finished doing that, I tend to grab the pole sander and start rubbing the edges, the inside corners, the edges of the corner bead, and any little spots that I miss. Now, again, do I recommend you buying a machine sander for, say, for example, a bathroom? Maybe. I mean, honestly, anything to take off the pressure off of your body, I highly recommend. Okay, so here we are with the pole sander, again, 150 grit. And again, it's all about the process here and the steps in the final sand. There's many things to learn about how to put on your sandpaper. For example, if you have a manual sander like this, it's good to have the paper aligned with one edge. There will be an overlap, And that's something I'll get into in another video. But most importantly is to get into those corners and provide a nice, clean, finished edge on all these corners. So realistically, you're gonna go inside the corners. You're gonna go against anything that wasn't sanded properly, and you're gonna make sure that your corner beads are also given a bit of work, because most of the time the sanding machine will not do an amazing job on areas such as corner beads. It will take off the edges nicely. It will sand, but again, this is a job that is a very detailed job. So all the tools matter and all the steps matter, in my opinion. Now, what you're aiming for with this one is, again, like I said, just the inside corners, just the inside edges, and mainly the corner beads inside the middle of the corner beads. And the reason for this is that sometimes, because of shrinkage or because of any little imperfection that exists, a detail sander such as this one is what's going to take out, the inner lines or the inner belly of the sanding process, right? And it is a detail sander. It really is. It's a fine job. And again, the only reason why I don't recommend using it for the entire job is because you're burning all your own physical energy on sanding, and it will exhaust you, right? You look at me, for example, in all my suits and everything that I have on here. It's exhausting. It's very hot. My body is moving, so it's a very hot job, right? In this scenario here that you're looking at, I'm touching off the factory edges. Sometimes the walls, it's wood. Wood makes most of these jobs build a house, right? So with wood, there is sometimes a bit of a wave that happens, and you do want to go back over and just double check some of these edges that you have. But the main important part here is the inside corner. I start from the walls. I do my best to get all the inside edges nice as possible, all the three-way nice as possible, around the plugs, all the detailed area. Sometimes even in the middle of a butt joint, I will try to sand it out and double check it. But the same process exists here. We start with the wall, and then we try to finish with the ceiling. If there's any extra spots, such as a butt joint, that you may notice, or even just feel as if, why not go over it again, it will only help. 150 grit sandpaper is what I use. Some people can use the 120. The 120 takes off more, but it also leaves more scratch mark. And by the time primer and paint gets on, it might be covered. But just for your own personal safety and just for a better finish, I recommend use 150 grit sandpaper. Okay, so now we are moving on to sponging. And sponging is a very delicate spot in the job. You notice that I'm going inside the corners again. And that may be asked why. And the reason why is that when you sand with a sanding pole, that only takes out the bulk of the inside corner, but the sanding sponge does the detail. Some of the sanding sponge, especially me, myself, and most of the tapers, they will use a angled sanding sponge, and that is to go inside the corner to create a very nice sharp corner. So that's the reason why we're sponging. Again, there's some details like on the edge of the corner beads. Like in this particular scenario here, I'm doing the edge of the corner beads to highlight the corner bead itself, to bring that sharp corner up. So, sometimes when you overlap the mud on the corner bead, there is a bit of debris on the corner bead. You take the sponge and sand off all those edges, 100%. Inside your three-way, you need to get right in there and sponge it out properly. You need to give it very, very detailed attention, and that's another reason why you see me walking around with the lights on right now. I have one light in my hand and one light on my head, and that might be overkill, but at the end of the day, it's better to do the job right than to come back and do touch-ups. Sanding now properly will save you a lot of headache on touch-ups a little bit later. When you work into drywall taping, you must consider the end product. What am I trying to end up with, right? And if you're going to just go through the job quickly and then come back and do touch-ups, that's an approach. There's always room for fixing with taping. But for me, I want to take out or eliminate as much as possible of the work. So, for example, some guys say do 3 coats. If you do 4 coats, that eliminates more probability for mess up or for cleaning up later. If you do 4 coats, right, you're working more, but then there's no chance of you coming back, right? Again, I sand with a light because it's very important to get right into those corners. It's very important once the paint gets in there. Again, I emphasize the idea that where does your eye land? Your eye lands in the corner. Your eye automatically falls on the corner bead, the edges of the corner bead. Any straight line that exists in the house, that's where your eyes are going to end it up. So you want to make your corners extremely sharp. You want to put a little bit of time and slowly go through and do the bottoms and the top. Again, this is the most important part of the job, in my opinion, and from my experience, is the sponging. Getting directly in those corners, using the right sponge, the angled edge sponge, and also getting the bottom and the top of that corner, right? Using a light, that helps a lot. Do not overlook the lights. And nowadays, I tend to use a smaller light, like you see here, very cordless, very rechargeable. I highly recommend these lights because you're not going to sand for 3 hours. So if they give you a half an hour of light, that's exactly what you need. Again, the work is hard in terms of you're physically putting in the work. So the last thing you want is a big light that is also hot with an extension cord that might trip you and fumble you up, right? So do the best you can to make your job easier from your perspective. Now, that wraps everything up in terms of what and why we sand. Again, the machine is not a requirement, but it does take a lot of the work off of your body. Be careful with the machine. There's a big learning curve. Do not forget to double check, double check, double check. Even as you see me here going through with the sponge, I still go back afterwards and double check. And as long as you do a thorough job, as long as you walk with the light, the end result should be, let's say, appropriate. In any case, thank you very much for watching, and check me out for more videos. They'll be coming in the future. Thank you.